Hello and welcome to our Salesforce United episode, a podcast about Salesforce and people who work with it. Here we discuss engineering discoveries, professional secrets, and careers of our guests. I'm Olga Dmitrieva, a Salesforce software testing engineer, and to my delight, your host.
Hello, my name is Elena Ulyanova. I'm a testing in Salesforce enthusiast, Salesforce consultant, and for my pleasure, the host of this Salesforce United podcast.
Today, we are thrilled to bring on board a very special guest, a Salesforce entry-level careers expert who has helped over 1,500 individuals land their first Salesforce job. With a proven strategy to help job seekers entering Salesforce roles in just 6 months on average, this expert knows the exact formula to launch careers with success. Please welcome Bradley Rice to the show. It is an honor to have you with us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here.
Hello, Bradley. Nice to meet you. You have a really great experience in different roles with the Salesforce. And let me ask, how did you get started with Salesforce and what led you to specialize in helping people find their first job in Salesforce?
Yeah, so for me, Salesforce, I started as a junior Salesforce administrator, and it was sort of by accident. I wanted to be a school teacher, and I could not find a job teaching, so I was kind of applying for everything. And there was a local company hiring for a Salesforce administrator, and I had no idea what that meant, but I applied for it anyway. And I could go longer, but long story short, I ended up getting that job. I was not qualified, but I got the job. And they trained me up and I had some great mentorship. And it sort of led me down this career path that I didn't really know was possible. You know, I started in the United States, making $30,000. And to me, that was really good, for my lifestyle. Again, I wanted to be a school teacher. I wasn't expecting a ton of money. And really quickly after that, I think I was about 27. So maybe 4 years later, I was making $120,000 a year. And it felt kind of unfair a little bit because I was looking at my counterparts from college or people I'd grown up with. And I was in a small blue collar town in rural West Georgia. And so, I grew up on a cattle farm. So the tech life wasn't something I was really aware of. And it was wild to see sort of this new world of Salesforce careers and flexibility and autonomy and working remotely and having, financial freedom that I had not experienced before. So that's sort of how I got started. And then all those reasons are also why I felt like I needed to share it. Because I think for some people who grow up maybe with parents or friends, or they go to colleges that are tech, educated or specific, that they're aware of some of these things, but the people around me were not aware of these types of jobs or how to get into them. So to me, it was kind of clear, like, this feels a little unfair that I have these advantages, and I kind of stumbled into this thing, and I really wanted to share it with a greater community of people who had maybe never heard of the possibility of these careers.
Oh, I love that so much. Your work has clearly impacted on so many people, and I'm sure that our audience is excited to learn from your wealth and experience. And let's talk about why Salesforce. Why should someone consider Salesforce as a career opportunity if they're starting from scratch?
Yeah, I think for anyone who's starting from scratch, right, it's a good place to be because you have options, but it's also a tough place to be because you have to make a decision on what you're going to go forward with. You can't really do a little bit of everything. You've got to focus on at least a couple of things and move forward. And you could do that with anything, right? You could get into real estate. You could get into accounting. You could get into healthcare, nursing, or whatever you want to start with. The reason I would say Salesforce is because the career opportunities that exist, you can get a normal full-time job, or you can work a part-time job. You can work remotely. You have more autonomy. One of the things I really like about Salesforce careers is you're respected in your roles. And a lot of jobs, you kind of just get told what to do and you need to go do your work. And then, don't try to change anything. And in Salesforce, as a professional, you're kind of given that responsibility to be the change maker, to be the person who's in the meeting and helping make the decisions around how we're going to make things easier for end users and businesses. So there's a lot of, you get to work remote a lot of times. You get to be a decision maker who sort of influences the progression of businesses. The income is really incredible compared to anything that I've been exposed to. So for all those reasons, I would lean towards Salesforce. I think it's a great place to hop in. And the truth is, if you learn Salesforce as a platform and you decide to go do something else with your career, you're still winning because you're learning business processes. You're learning how do companies generate leads? How do they get sales? How do they structure that inside of a database? How do they create automations to streamline their businesses? So to me, learning about Salesforce as a platform and how it works is actually beneficial. Even if you want to be an entrepreneur or work in a different part of a business, it's still really beneficial to understand these concepts.
Great. So you told about how to build a career in Salesforce, like you did from the junior administrator. But from the point of hiring, have you noticed some hiring process specific trends in Salesforce?
Yeah, I have, right? Because I spend a lot of time with this. This is my full-time job is helping people sort of navigate Salesforce careers. And so I get the privilege of seeing what they're experiencing, what I'm experiencing. I get to work with employers. I get to work with recruiters. So I see a lot of the changes. And one thing that I'll say has changed a lot here just in the last, I would say last 5 years, is we've seen this introduction of automated systems. We've always seen that, but specifically in the hiring processes. And so you might talk about like ATS systems that automatically review resumes. You might be talking about the other side, which might be automated systems to automatically apply you for jobs. So it comes from both sides. Employers are automatically reviewing resumes, and we have bots. A lot of people want to call them AI bots, but to be honest, they're not really AI. They're just web scrapers that go and check for job openings, and then they automatically apply your resume for that job. It's not really AI. There's no artificial intelligence needed there, but there are these automations that are in place. And that has really grown in the last 5 years. And it's made it really hard on candidates, and it's made it really hard on employers. And the reason for that is a lot of times as the candidate, who's probably the audience listening right now, a lot of times we look at it from our lens and we go, it's so hard to apply for jobs because a job gets listed yesterday and now this morning it has 300 applicants on it. How am I ever going to get that job? Well, the truth is, that's really, really hard on the employer too. Like, think about it from the employer perspective. Every day they're getting hundreds of applicants on a job posting. They really need help hiring, and they really need to hire someone. And now they've got to spend, what if they spend 10 minutes per application? 300 times over? That's almost impossible for them to actually do. So that has changed a lot. Employers aren't really looking at those 300 applications. And you as the candidate don't really need to worry about the 300 applications, because the truth is, in the companies that I work with, they have expressed that those 300 applicants, number one, most of them are just bot applicants because the job was listed as remote. And so these bot applications globally are applying for the job. And so most of the people are not in the correct country for the hiring laws around that position. Most of the people don't even know what Salesforce is, even though it's a Salesforce position. They have no idea what an administrator certification is or anything else. They just applied because it's remote. Honestly, that's what I did when I got my first Salesforce job, right? I had no idea what Salesforce was. I was just applying. And that's what is happening a lot right now. So they're leaning on, to answer your question, what's changing in the modern job market, and specifically around applying for jobs, is you can't really just apply for a job and get the job anymore. So what I would suggest, and I'll try to make this quick, is apply on LinkedIn or Indeed or the job board, wherever you're applying. Also go to the company website and apply, because that's where some of these old school HR teams, they're not even going to check LinkedIn. They're actually just going to look at the website first to see if anybody applied there. And then on top of that, you really do need to use LinkedIn as a platform to see if you can connect with anyone from the company and make that direct connection. There are details in that, right? Like we could go for an entire podcast episode about how to connect with people, how to make it feel natural and organic and network your way into these roles. But suffice to say, employers actually like it when you get in touch with them directly because it allows them to see who's giving the extra effort, who's trying to get in touch, who's going beyond the job application. And that allows them to bypass that massive onslaught of bot applicants globally online and just focus on the people who are really interested in this role and putting their best foot forward.
That's great. It's really important to know how to succeed in today's job market. And speaking of real world experience, let's talk about where the beginners go wrong. In your opinion, what mistakes do beginners make while starting their Salesforce career path?
Yeah, I'll cover this quickly. And anybody listening, if you want more details, feel free to, you can reach out to me. I try to get back to everyone. But here are the biggest mistakes I see. Number one, creating a LinkedIn profile, but then not being active or taking it seriously. Like that last question I answered about the job search strategy, you can see how LinkedIn comes into play there with connecting directly and DMing individuals. LinkedIn is a really, really important part of the current job market, especially entry level. Your resume doesn't give you any leverage, right? So you have to give yourself leverage and put yourself out there and show that you are an active candidate and you're really engaged in this ecosystem. LinkedIn can help you do that. So take LinkedIn seriously. I'm happy to give you more guidance on that. The other thing that I see is certification, this like certification hamster wheel, where you get one certification and then instead of working on anything else, you just start working on another certification. So I'll see people go like Salesforce Associate Cert and then Salesforce AI Associate and then Salesforce Admin. And then immediately they head into Salesforce Platform App Builder and then maybe Salesforce Business Analyst. And it's not a good strategy. You do need the Salesforce Administrator certification. That is like a benchmark, baseline. Employers understand it to mean that you have some fundamental understanding of the platform. But you do not need to go get 2, 3, 4, 5 certifications. It's really unnecessary and it's an inefficient use of your time. So a more efficient use would be getting hands-on experience, even if that's you making up scenarios and practice projects and building those out, getting super badges through Trailhead, maybe joining in community groups and say to, hey, does anybody want to work on a practice project together? And we can sort of come up with some requirements and then implement those. There's a lot of great ways to get hands-on experience. And that is much better. Once you've gotten that Salesforce Administrator certification, keep your skills polished, but try to get some hands-on experience and build your network while applying for jobs. And that's going to be much more effective than just getting cert after cert after cert. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, and when the candidate is already in the Salesforce sphere, working as a developer or administrator or consultant or anyone, so how the candidate can stand out in the competitive Salesforce job market?
Yeah, I think this goes for anyone, whether they're entry or they're experienced, even if you're a technical architect and you're kind of in that higher echelon of talent. If you want to be different and if you want to get different results, you have to act differently than everyone else, right? The typical person is going to apply for tens of jobs, hundreds of jobs, and they're just going to mass apply on LinkedIn and go crazy and just spam the apply button, right? And that's what a lot of people are going to do to try to get jobs. If you're trying to stand out in the market, most people are they're going to just go after certification. They're going to collect certifications like their Pokemon cards, and they're just going to go nuts, right? And that's where you can sort of make a decision and say, do I want to act like everyone else? Or do I think I could find a better way to differentiate myself? So how do you differentiate yourself? There are a multitude of ways. I'll just give you a few examples and you can do what feels good for you. If you're one of these people who likes creating video content, then a YouTube channel or a TikTok or an Instagram and just creative video content can be fun. Now, that's not going to be fun for someone who's maybe introverted, right? Another great way to get yourself out there is attending community events. And specifically, I would say volunteer for community events. They always need volunteers. And this is sort of a little hack that I like to share, is when you volunteer for Salesforce community events like Dreamin' events or other localized events, a lot of times if there's a ticket price, you'll get a free ticket. You only have to volunteer for a few hours, but the cool thing is you get to hang out behind the scenes with the other volunteers. The other volunteers are typically leaders in the Salesforce community. These might be Golden Hoodie winners or MVPs who are like elected winners, if you will, or elected sort of Salesforce leaders, if you will. But there's a lot of other people who maybe don't have those accolades, but they are as great of leaders or more influential than anyone else around, right? These are business owners. These are people who are extremely involved in the Salesforce community. They know people, they know recruiters, they know hiring teams, they know people who need some freelance help on the side. If you get connected behind the scenes at these events as a volunteer, it's huge. Plus, it allows you to network. So if you're working the front desk at an event, handing out the badges to the people who come into the event, you get a free opportunity to shake hands and say hi to every single person who's at that event, right? And that's something that would probably be a little might make you a little nervous or cause anxiety to go shake hands or meet people. And so as a volunteer, it gives you an excuse to meet everyone and not have to feel awkward at all about it, because you would expect the staff to meet the members that are showing up. So those are just a couple of examples of ways that you can get involved, better yourself, differentiate yourself, and rub shoulders with the most influential leaders in the Salesforce community.
Great advice. So you have provided a lot of useful information, but there is a common roadblock. What's your advice, for example, to someone who is constantly learning, constantly polishing his skills, created a great LinkedIn profile, let it say like this, has just one useful certification, but still isn't getting any interview callbacks? What should be done?
Yeah. Well, the great news is, you know, if we're assuming this person has already done what we talked about, right? Like the LinkedIn, the job search strategies, the resumes, you know, they've got the certification. That's a lot of hard work that has gone in, and that has laid an incredible foundation for getting interviews. But to your point, you're applying for jobs, but you're not getting results. And so you could go back to, you know, I talked briefly about the job search strategy and really applying a more targeted approach to the companies that you're applying for, because a lot of people like to say in job applications, it's a numbers game and just apply for as many as possible and that betters your odds. It does not better your odds. For the reasons we talked about with hundreds of applicants on single job posting, your odds do not get any better. And the type of company who's going to hire you because you played the numbers game is probably not the company you really want to work for anyway. It's going to be a company that's more thoughtful about who they hire and more interested in the people that they're engaging with, and not just hiring anyone off the street who mass applies to jobs, right? So how am I going to get interviews? You have to get in touch with humans. I know that sounds simple, but in today's world, we're talking more and more about interacting with machines and interacting with bots and interacting with AI avatars and whatever else. You have to get in touch with a human, because a computer is not going to hire you. A human is going to hire you. A computer might interview you for your first interview, unfortunately. But ultimately, you are going to interview with real humans who want to know more about you. So I would say, if you are applying for jobs and you're using a targeted job search strategy, then, and you are still not getting interviews, there is something they are noticing that is sort of tipping them off. So it might be something in your resume. It might be something on your LinkedIn profile. There's something in there that's not quite on point. Because even if, you know, getting interviews is still not a job. You still have to interview well to get a job. So getting interviews is still a step before the ultimate goal. So if you're not getting interviews, we have to adjust something in there. It might be the way you're DMing people. You might be being too direct. Like, hey, I saw you have a job. Can you hire me? Like, that's not going to work, right? We have to be a little bit softer with our approach. Our LinkedIn profile it might be the way that we're engaging. Maybe we're commenting and it's a little aggressive, or maybe it doesn't seem really thoughtful and we're just reposting stuff constantly, or just saying, good job. And it's not meaningful and it doesn't feel like we're really involved in this. So I would say there's something about that personal human-to-human interaction that needs to be tweaked. If you've checked all the boxes, you've done all the work, you've put in the effort, and it's still not getting to that interview process. Networking is a big part of this, meeting people, like I said, volunteering at events. Those are all little things you can do. And it's not one thing, it's that snowball effect that gets bigger and bigger. And eventually, out of left field, something you totally didn't expect, that connection hits. And now you're seeing yourself getting interviews because you're spreading yourself out and casting that net a little bit wider.
Well, I'm totally agree that interacting with other people is very important nowadays. Bradley, you have already said that once you understood the feeling that you need to share your experience in Salesforce and Salesforce building, career building to other people. But what is the hardest part about helping someone zero in their first role in Salesforce?
I think the hardest part for me, as someone dedicated to helping others get in, is it's the emotional side of getting into a new career. I work with a lot of people who are, when you work with somebody who's, say, like a young adult, like 18 to 22, it's not as difficult because they're not in a career and restarting, or they didn't get like I don't really like the way my professional life is going and now I want to start over. So they're not as, I think, set back or feeling set back. Those individuals kind of like, they're ready to learn. This is the first thing they're seriously learning as far as a career goes. And it's much, much simpler. But then there comes like this mental baggage with individuals who are, say, 27 plus. And it's because we've started our careers. We've probably already started at something and we thought that was our thing. And this was going to be our dream and we were going to be successful at it. And now it's just not panning out for whatever reason. We might just want to work remote. We might just want to get away. Like, I did not realize how hard the labor was that I got into. I didn't realize how difficult it was emotionally to be a nurse. I didn't realize that being a teacher, even though I love kids, is just too much. All these things, right? Like, for whatever reason, we start on this one thing and then we go, man, I want to shift. And that shift is hard because now we might have car payments and we might have house payments and we might have medical payments and we might have kids that we're taking care of and sending them to daycare, whatever else. And life is a little more complicated now that we've entered into adulthood, like truly, fully filling it. And so there's this emotional step that I would say is the hardest part for me because I'm very empathetic, and the hardest part for the learners because they're going through this process, and it may not sound like a lot because you think about a 4-year college degree, and that's a big commitment, right? And we're only talking about learning something for a year or less and getting into a new career. But that year can be the longest year of your life. This learning a new thing, doubting yourself, feeling like an imposter, a totally new space. You're in tech now instead of education or healthcare or nonprofit or whatever else. And you're going to have those moments where you fail a certification exam and you feel like, I don't know if I'm worthy, or you don't get interviews and you go, I must not be what they're looking for. Maybe I'm not capable of this. Or you get an interview and then you get told no. There are a lot of mental hurdles that people have to overcome. And I would say dealing with those mental hits over and over for a 3-month, 6-month, 9-month, 12-month period, that can be really demanding. So for anyone sort of coming into this, just know, it's a proven process, but you have to have your head game strong and sort of know your why. Why are you transitioning into this? Because it's very easy to latch onto an excuse to stop, and it can be difficult to latch onto a reason to keep going. So make sure you have your reasons to keep going before you get started.
Yeah, that makes sense. And talking about learning new things and difficult years, I still have one question about the certifications. Could you please explain why it's better not to generalize and start, for example, with a Salesforce admin certificate rather than learning Marketing Cloud, Sales Cloud, etc., and gaining those certifications? Why the first strategy is better?
Yeah. So for me, the answer to this question is that it's going to be really hard to specialize if you don't know the basics yet, right? So I sort of compare this to like riding a bike. It's going to be really hard. Like, you can't just come in and be like, okay, I see people riding a bike, So I've decided before I even know how to ride a bicycle, I am going to specialize in doing backflips. And that's going to be my specialty. But you don't even know how to ride a bike yet. Why are you worried about doing a backflip, right? We need to learn how to take the training wheels off and balance on two wheels and pedal and balance and shift gears and all these kind of things before we ever worry about how we're going to specialize, right? And that goes for Salesforce. And it goes for anything, honestly. But it's, for Salesforce too, I see people getting caught like I need to specialize because if I specialize, then I'm niched in. And if I'm niched in, then I have a better opportunity to land these specific roles and maybe higher pay. But if you don't know the basics to Salesforce, page layouts and record types and profiles and roles and how the organization-wide defaults intertwine with all these different things and why somebody sees something on a report but somebody else doesn't, and how to build those and how the objects intertwine with one another. If you don't know that, how are you going to call CPQ your expertise or call Marketing Cloud a totally different platform your expertise? And so you have to focus on the basics first and differentiate yourselves not by your specialty, because you're not going to be special yet, right? You got to be basic before you can be special. And so you're not going to be special yet. So start with the basics, differentiate yourself in other ways, like we talked about in previous conversations on the show. What I will say is that if you come from a marketing background and you've worked with marketing automation platforms and now you're kind of moving into Salesforce, okay, fine. You might be able to carry that over into Marketing Cloud and specialize because you have something that pulls in. If you come from a nonprofit background, you might be able to get nonprofit cloud certified and specialize in NPC even before you get started because you already have a nonprofit background and experience. So you could take that from anything: education cloud, health cloud, CPQ if you come from a sales background, etc. So if you have a specific background that aligns with a specialty, awesome. You might be able to pull that off. If you're coming from something that doesn't feel like it aligns with a specialty, then everyone needs to start with the admin certification, but you especially need to focus in on that admin certification and going the more generic route. Again, you need to learn the basics before you start thinking about how you're going to specialize. That's my opinion, at least.
Thanks for your answer. Let's jump to freelancing. So it's a really great opportunity of Salesforce as a system to provide the professionals the option to work for the company or being a freelancer. So from your point of view, what makes freelancing an exciting option for Salesforce professionals?
Yeah, for me, it was sort of the natural progression of being a Salesforce professional. So I had gone from junior admin to solution architect and consultant and, all these roles. And I started my own consultancy and I realized there's this natural progression. And number one, you can work a full-time job and you can freelance on the side, right? And even if you make, I'm going to go with like a lower, the cool thing is that freelancing rates are more globalized because there aren't as many legalities around hiring freelancers. So you could live in Canada and freelance in the US, or live in Italy and freelance in Canada, or whatever else, right? So it's totally up to you. And so there's this overlap that kind of goes away with the hiring laws that are in place in different countries. So that's the nice thing. So even if we start with like a baseline, let's say $50 an hour, which is on the low side for Salesforce professionals to freelance, and you find a client that's willing to work with you just 5 hours a week. 5 hours a week. So you keep your day job, you freelance 5 hours a week, 20 hours a month, $50 an hour. You're making an extra $1,000. Maybe I did the math right back of the envelope, but I think about an extra $1,000 per month USD by working just 5 extra hours a week. Odds are you can probably get those 5 hours a week done, that 1 hour a day, during your day job, during your lunch break, while things are slow at work, like those kind of things, especially if you have a remote job. So you do no extra work potentially, or at least no extra hours of your time committed, and you make an extra $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. Now you can imagine how that could scale up if you wanted to work more hours, but also for people who maybe want to take a break and quit their day job and just work 10-hour work weeks, right? Or 20-hour work weeks. And that was me. My daughter was born. I didn't want to work full time anymore. And so freelancing allowed me to work 20 hours a week, but I ended up making more money than I made in my full-time job because of the rates. So I ended up making over $200,000 a year freelancing 20 to 25 hours a week. So to me, it opens up that freedom where you can add more clients and work 40, 50 hours a week if you're buying a house or you have unexpected expenses come up, or you can work less if you're at a time in your life where you want to travel more and not have work hanging over you. It just adds more flexibility. And the cool thing is you don't have to learn new skills. It's the same skills you use in your day job that you get to carry over to work for clients on the side or make it your full-time thing if you want to. It's just the next level of income and flexibility for people who already have Salesforce skills.
Sounds great. So an ability to increase your income, flexibility, and even following the life-work balance. But what are some common hurdles Salesforce professionals face when starting their freelancing journey?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what listeners are going to think is their number one hurdle. And because it's the number one hurdle that I hear people expressing, and it is getting your first client, right? Getting your first client is going to be the number one hurdle. There are a lot of different ways to get your first client. I could go in on it. I've got a list of 20 ways, but a really common way for especially beginners is to volunteer. And then volunteer for 10 or 20 hours and then pitch the company on a paid engagement to go forward, right? So okay, I'm going to volunteer for you for this long. Hey, I loved working with you. And now here's my hourly rate, and I'd love to keep working with you. And here's some ideas I had for your business. Another way is to subcontract with consultancies. Another way is to actually, build a website and build your brand and have forms, lead magnets that pull your ideal clients towards you, and you actually work them and sell them. But the reason I said so note that there are absolutely an abundance of ways to find clients. That's going to be the problem you think is your biggest problem. And then when you find a client that's interested, your biggest problem is suddenly going to be closing the deal and selling them. And then once you close the deal and selling them, your biggest problem is going to be giving them a quality project and a quality experience, not just good work, but a quality experience, good project plans and timelines, status reports telling them about how to move the project forward and how things are going, communicating training and making sure that they feel like they're being guided through the project instead of having to tell you what to do. That's the big difference between a freelancer and an employee. An employee is a task doer a lot of times. A freelancer is a business owner who guides the project forward. So those are a lot of the big differences. So it's funny because you think finding a client is the hardest thing or the most difficult part. And then as you find a client, it's just the next thing becomes the most difficult part. And then scaling your business becomes the most difficult or most prioritized part. So at different points in the journey, different things are the hardest thing. But you can absolutely tackle it all. And I get why people want to start with getting their first client. But trust that you can get it all done. It's one little bite at a time.
Great points, really. And on this note of realizing that each next task is harder than the previous one, we are wrapping up. And it was a great and insightful and even empowering conversation. Thank you very much, Bradley, for sharing your knowledge on breaking into Salesforce, navigating the job market, and diving into freelancing opportunities. It was great.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And look me up on LinkedIn. You're welcome to reach out, and I'm happy to be a resource to anyone who needs some help.
Thank you very much, Bradley, for the conversation. It was really very nice. And thanks for those life hacks for the people who listen to our podcast. And thank you, dear listeners, for being with us today. As always, we will be very happy to receive any comments, questions, and ideas. And if you like the podcast, please rate it on the platform and share with your friends. So till very soon, till the next interesting podcast, and stay tuned.
Until then, keep trailblazing. Goodbye.
Thanks everybody for listening. I hope you got value out of the show. As they mentioned, make sure to leave them a 5-star review. I know that helps a lot with our podcast. I know it helps with their podcast too. And best of luck on your Salesforce career journey.